Tim is, of course, an industry legend. As Managing Director of Google Operations America, he was part of the commercial team that helped build Google into the powerhouse it is today. And when all that must have seemed too easy, he took on the challenge of reinvigorating AOL, which he leads today. Thanks very much, Tim, for keynoting our Media Day. Tim Armstrong.
So great to be back in Austin again, and thanks for having AOL here. I'm going to talk about some things today, but the biggest thing that I'm working on personally with our management team at AOL is our next 5-year strategy, which we're going to our board of directors with in May. And the strategy is built off of the Blue Ocean strategy. And just to summarize what I'm going to talk about, and probably during the Q&A, some of the stuff you're going to hear about, when I look at the agency landscape right now, I see Blue Ocean opportunity. And if you haven't read that book or seen it, you can go to blueoceanstrategy.com and it will give you a basic premise of what that strategy difference is. But the strategy has 2 components to it. One is red and one is blue. The Blue Ocean strategy has you focus not on your competition and not on anything other than where you're going to be able to add value in the future. And if I'm being really direct with the agency community, and I've been partners with the agency community for 20 years, it seems like there's too much time getting spent on the red strategy, which is what's the competition doing, what's the pricing doing, those things. And I think there's a much larger opportunity for the agencies to play a really, really big role in the future. And I'm going to talk about that really briefly today. And as a matter of fact, I have a longer presentation. I'm going to condense it down more quickly because I think with Bill, I want to spend some time talking about this and doing Q&A. So the first thing I want to take off the table, you guys have all seen these quotes from David Ogilvy before, but 20 years ago, I started a newspaper in Boston. I didn't know anything about advertising, and I asked somebody in the ad industry, what's the best thing I can read? And they said, read Ogilvy in advertising. And if you read that, I have it in my office at home, the original copy I had 20 years ago. It talks about how data and creativity need to mix together. And I think this is one of the things that you got to just take off the table in the industry, and we don't need to talk about anymore. If Ogilvy was talking about it, many, many decades ago, why are we still talking about it today? If you're not going to use data and you're not going to hook data with creative, you shouldn't be in the industry. And I think that is a core premise of what we should all focus on. I want to talk a little bit about what I consider to be the agency of the future. And I have 2 lenses on this. One is being a media company, and the second is being the CEO who gets pitched all the time by different marketing things and agencies. And I'll talk what I think the agency of the future capabilities need to be. The first is that the amount of client confusion in the next 20 years is going to dramatically go up. And I'll give you a couple examples of this. But at our company, I talk about this as the 4% opportunity. 4% of video is essentially done on mobile today. 4% of advertising is actually truly run programmatic globally right now. And when you think about the world's population, 4% of the world's population lives in the United States. You're going to have billions of more people connected, and the amount of stuff that John just talked about in terms of the ramp up, in terms of media usage and video usage, that stuff is just starting. And if you took 4% in a baseball game, the other team would have 2 outs. We wouldn't have gotten up yet, and we're in the first inning. So this is early days, but the agency opportunity is built around what's going to be a very confusing landscape for clients. The messaging space has been getting tons of press, and a lot of people are talking about it. You probably see it in your own households with your kids, how they're transitioning from different message services. And if I went to the average client and I said to them, what's the best messaging platform for you to be on to communicate directly, my guess is your agency should be able to answer that question. The clients are probably very confused by a space like this overall about how to interact with it. And when you zoom back and you think about all the media spaces that a client has to deal with and the types of audiences and online, offline, the agencies are the only community that basically is sitting between digital, offline, and the culmination of all of these aspects. And I think while a lot of discussion happens about where digital's going and where TV's going and all those other things, the only true industry that sits between TV and digital is the ad agency community. Even the largest players in digital are just getting going in video, and TV, that will come together over time, but the people who sit right between those 2 landscapes are the agencies. And this slide shows a human level view of the landscape of media. but I'm going to show you a slide of what and I think one thing that happens is the agency community tries to connect all of these different things together for clients. But when you go out 10 years or 15 years from now, there basically will be giant systems that connect that all together, and it will smooth out what a lot of the gaps are between those different types of media. And I believe the agency of the future in a blue ocean strategy is going to spend their time right in the middle in this giant blue pipe, which is building creative and building media that basically can run and shoot into any media at any time overall. And the conversations about where agencies add value is really sitting right in the middle of this blue bar. And from a capability standpoint, the most important thing I see outside from our media perspective and from the agency media perspective is you have to be able to operate in that blue bar. And you have to have your company, your team, and I'll talk about some of the changes we made at AOL around this recently. But this is what the media landscape looks like to a computer or a machine. And you have to get ready that this is the landscape that we're going to operate in. I guarantee it means more jobs, more people doing more things, more creatives needed. All this is a positive for the industry if you transition to this. I also think it does something really serious, though, for the community, and I'd love to hear feedback on this, is I think that world where there's a blue pipe going through the entire industry is really going to put pressure on and break the split between creative and media, and that's something that we feel pretty strongly about. The reason is because the amount of creative that's needed and the amount of media that's needed with data connected in the middle is going to exponentially scale. And when I think about the blue ocean opportunities for agencies on the creative side, I think about the fact that every single individual could get individual creative over time. And I was watching the NCAA basketball tournament this past weekend, and one of the things I took away from the NCAA tournament, and I was watching on TV, not online, was the fact that Buick is making high-quality cars. Because I saw probably 10 Buick ads, the same ad, in the same game over and over again, which the next morning I woke up and said, if I was going to give feedback to TV advertisers on the NCAA tournament, what would I say? I'd say, message delivered on Buick, and I mean it. I have a feeling that Buick makes better cars now. Every other time I see a Buick ad in the next 3 weeks of the tournament, 2 weeks in the tournament, it's probably going to be wasted money. You should be giving me more different types of creative overall. So I think that's a huge thing. The other thing is advertising will eventually turn more into storylines of content. And instead of every series being House of Cards, we X'd out the C and the R. It's really House of Ads. You know, how do you stay with a consumer over time? These are the things that digital are going to allow you to do. And the Internet of Things we can talk about. Client is the consumer. There's so much discussion in the industry right now about what the agency relationship is with their client, who's getting paid for what, how things work, where the value is, all those things in general. No one is talking about how ad agencies represent consumers. What is the best thing you can do for a consumer? Why, as a client, should I pay you more money because you're the best company in the world at dealing with consumers on the media and creative side? And then on the scale of the media business, you know, 5G is going to be huge. The speeds will be faster. There's going to be the World Wide Web turns into the World Wide Network. In the US right now, we think that dealing with a cable system with 20 million users on it is a big deal. I guarantee you 5 years from now, you're going to think that number is 500 million. The amount of pools and the size of the consumer bases are going to be really, really big. And then the last point down there is data is going to move beyond human comprehension. When I started at AOL, we did 300 million ad decisions a day. Today, we're doing over 1 trillion. At 300 million, you could have a relevant conversation with engineers inside of the company to talk about how we tweak things to do it. At 1 trillion ad decisions a day, machines have to make a lot of those decisions, and that's okay. We're hiring more creative engineers to think about how we do that, and we're hiring more account managers and those type of positions to move beyond that. So the advertising agency of the future, I believe the answer to everything is both. And going back to the Ogilvy point, I don't think, you know, when Ogilvy started, he thought about those things in a separated way. I think he thought about them together. This is a quote here. You're going to have a fundamentally different landscape in 2 or 3 or 5 years from now. Our sales force and our trading business fundamentally will have to adapt to a new way to engage clients. Okay, what industry is this quote from? It's from Wall Street. And it talked about how bond desks are, like computers are really starting, machines have changed the way that bonds get traded. I see this completely differently, which is the machines and the beeps coming out of machines should allow creatives to do a much, much, much better job. And if I was talking to Andrew Robertson, I would say to him, Andrew, let me feed you a massive amount of data and do 100 times the amount of creative that could possibly be done. And I think you'll see a different industry. And then Ogilvy, I think, is one of the interesting companies where, from a programmatic creative standpoint, they give every new employee the same creative box when they start. And from a standpoint, it means everybody in their organization, I'm guessing, I haven't talked to the Ogilvy people, start from the same mentality of how they're going to go through and think about creativity on the same platform. I think the internet today and digital and everything that's happening is about getting a box in everyone's hands, which allows them to do creative and data together, and then put real human work on top of those things. And this is a famous joke, but if you get caught by a bear, it's not whether or not you need to outrun the bear. And at AOL, I call this the data bear. It's whether or not you can run faster than the person you're next to, because the bear is going to catch the slowest person. Every single person in our industry faces the challenge of digital. We face it as a company. You guys face it as a company. It's not whether or not the bear catches you. It's whether or not you move. If you look around your tables, if you're sitting at the competitive tables with people, look at the person next to you. It's what companies run the fastest to this area. And at AOL, in 2009 when I started, we were the guy with the camera. We had a lot of historical stuff. We tripped, and the bear was coming towards us. And today, I'm not going to go through all these, but we made a decision in a blue ocean strategy, same framework we're using today, to get into things like video, content brands, programmatic, when a lot of people weren't there. And recently, we just changed our sales force. And somebody inside the company said to me, Tim, why are we changing the sales force? We just went through 5 years of transforming, and now we're restructuring the company again. And I said, because the bear is getting closer. We need to basically run faster. We need to set up for programmatic, set up for the future of video. And I think it's the constant evolutions and changes that are really, really important. So I am a firm believer, and I have been for 20 years, that the ad agency business is going to be really strong in the future. I'm not just saying that. I believe that. And I think the second thing is, I think the companies that stop talking about fees, stop talking about all the stuff that's in the press constantly. Where is the value and how are you running in that blue pipe, and only talk about that. That's one thing I see from my outsider's perspective overall. So thanks. I'll have Bill come out, and I think we're going to do a little Q&A.
So that was amazing. Thank you, Tim. Bill Koenigsberg, who you met yesterday, will be leading a short Q&A with Tim, just to kind of extend this discussion a little bit. So please welcome back to the stage Bill Koenigsberg, leader of Horizon and chairman of the 4A's USA. Thank you.
That was great. A little scary as well. We've spent the last day yesterday, talked a lot about blue ocean. We talked about white canvas. We've talked about collaboration. We've talked about partnership, automation, data, real-time marketing. It's pretty heady, pretty strong. So for the group out here, not just in terms of working with AOL, but how would you design the perfect partnership? What do you look for? What are the traits? How do you be a perfect partner in the world we're living in for the agency community?
Yeah, so I think, just so the agency community thinks about it this way, if you're an internet company or a TV company, you're in the media space, you're under tremendous pressure to make the same transformation the agencies are. So I think one is, you have to move really quickly, and you have to have the right skill sets matched up together. So I think in a kind of a partnership collaboration standpoint, the first thing we look for is, I call it the plug and socket, can we plug into each other's organizations in a way? And I think, 20 years ago when I started doing this, there was a much different plug-in. There was a relationship. Today, that relationship is still really important, but that relationship has now moved into things like data enablement. Do you have product people on both sides integrated? Do you have a situation where you have your content people integrated on both sides? So if I think about the plug-in situation, it went from a single plug, single socket to now you need an entire array of multiple sockets and multiple plugs, and all the plugs have to be put in. And I think just on the client side, what I see on the client side is the clients are under tremendous pressure also because they have all the same issues the agencies and media companies do, but they have an extra issue, which is they have people like activist investors and stuff inside of the companies trying to change the conversation of get everything for no cost, blah, 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 blah in general. And the reality is, so agencies are bookended between media companies that are losing control of their audiences and clients who are losing control of their financial situations because of the pressure in the marketplace today. And you guys are feeling the squeeze in the middle, and I'm feeling squeezed on the sides. But the true partnership is somebody who basically blockades across and allows us. Like I've met with lots of agencies, and we've done a bunch of marketing at AOL. I never ask what the price is. I ask, what do we get? What do I get at the end? I call it the gumball machine. If I put a quarter and I turn it, what comes out at the bottom? And it's more about what the value you're getting. And I think the value is the only thing that protects that chain. So I'd say that the collaboration piece is, do you have all the right plugins set up? And it's pretty easy to do. If you just wrote down all the media companies, all the clients, and you in the middle, how many places do you have a socket that looks like it was 10 years old, and how many places do you have a socket that looked like it was built for 2015?
Yeah. So with speed to market, all the different components having to fit together, questions are going to get a little tougher right now.
Yep.
So do you feel that the agency community is moving fast enough in terms of adapting to the change that's needed today, or is technology and automation and real-time marketing moving so fast that we're constantly playing catch-up? Or from where you sit, do you feel that we're set up and we are in a position to take advantage of the opportunity that's out there?
I mean, I tend to be a street-level thinker overall. So if I judge what I thought the perfect ad agency relationship would be, this is what it would be. It would be a sales plugin, a product plugin, a content plugin, and an engineering plugin. You'd have to have those four components correctly plugged in at all times. The second piece is actually there would be more two-way data sharing. We would share more data with the agencies, and the agencies with all the other stuff they're doing for a client would share with us, and we would co-build something that was very solid over time. My perspective on the agency community right now is there are some agencies that are doing that, and there are some agencies that aren't. And the agencies that aren't have conversations like this. Everything's got to run on my technology. The creative side and the trading desk side don't talk to each other. And I think those are things that I see as danger points, because the problem is when you split those things apart, the thing that falls through in the middle is the client. And my guess is, and I know this to be a fact, I think the clients don't have the headcount to do this themselves, okay? So what happens is when agencies split apart and clients fall down between directly to media, they go in and try to cut a deal with the media people directly. They don't have the headcount to make it work, and they end up migrating back out to the agencies. But since the agency wasn't set up to do this to beginning with, you end up with a frustrated client who says, okay, I tried to get you together up front, you didn't do it, you split, I ended up with the media person, now I've cut the deal with them, now the deal has to go back up, but when it goes back up, nobody got bought in the loop, nobody did those things, so it ends up, and then the client's unhappy again. I don't know if you guys see that, but that's what when I think about the problems that I see in the industry, those are some of the things I see versus you and us coming together, putting our plug-in sockets together, and then every time a client comes in, we say, look, the bottom line is we have the plug-in socket set up, now we're going to put the sockets connected into the client as well, and nobody's falling through any gaps. The biggest misnomer I think people see in the ad agency business is this whole notion of whether or not you need an agency. The clients don't have the headcount to operationalize a lot of the stuff we just talked about in general. They're going to get, they'll hire those people and they'll get there, but right now they don't. So it's really important that plug-in socket thing works well.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of talk about talent and what's needed in the industry, and you just talked about engineers, content, data analytics people.
Yep.
And I think we are all striving towards hiring new types of talent that's needed in the future in order to stay ahead. So from a marketing perspective, the marketing community out there,
Yeah.
and I include the agency community with the marketing community, and let's be honest, let's be open, give us a grade in terms of taking advantage of the blue ocean opportunity out there today. And I'm going to put you on the spot.
Yeah.
You know, is it an A+? Is it an F? You know, what is it? And from where you sit, because
Right.
you take the incoming, you take some of
Yeah.
the pain, but you also get some of the glory in terms of successes. And I know it's not a one-size-fits-all bucket, but where do you see the community today? How much work do we have to do?
I think basically the grade I would give right now is I think the conversation has finally changed to what needs to happen. So on a conversation standpoint, you know, I'd probably give it actually just the topics I've heard about in this meeting and what I've heard about it. I'd give it A- in terms of what people are talking about and focused on. On the execution side, I think it's a lot lower than that. And I think on the execution side, the reason it's a lot lower is it fundamentally you have to change the socket plugin and the collaboration you're doing with the media partners, and there's too much defensive behavior going on. And I think, you know, if I were thinking about what would make effective from an agency standpoint, is to take every one of your media partners, create that plug-in socket analogy, and just go through and figure out where do you have the plugs and sockets set up. Because once you start, you get the A- for talking about it, and you're getting a lower grade for not getting it done at this point. Let's say you have a B- on the execution side. You know, your average grade is going to be a B. You know, a B. The clients, I don't know many clients that want B. You know, outcomes and executions. So I think the reality is you have to do the street level work to put those plugs, you know, in together. And the other thing I would just say is, from a talent perspective, from a client perspective, from a media perspective, the ongoing discussion about ad agencies and what comes up in the marketplace in general, very little of it talks about the value proposition. And if I were, you know, when Nancy and I were talking about this back, I think Nancy is an unbelievable representative person for the ad agency industry. But I would put Nancy in that 4A's out front and do one rule: only talk about value. You know, and I know there's other things you need to talk about, but you know, there's a lot of value getting driven here that will get you better talent, get you better clients, like those things in general. And I think you gotta be careful on the blue ocean strategy. The red ocean strategy is when you only talk about competition, only talk about cost, only talk about those things. And just in the PR basis, there's a lot of that around the industry.
So, look, I love the value equation. And when you talk about AOL's assets and the pond that you control, where do you feel marketers and agencies are not taking the advantage of the biggest opportunity within the AOL ecosystem? Do you feel we're missing the boat? Do you feel, you know, huge room to grow? Do we not understand all the assets? But where is the opportunity not being taken advantage of the most in terms of your future and where you're going?
I think first and foremost, we have to earn the business. So, you know, if it's not getting used properly, that's our job overall. I think there's some gap areas. I think one is, you know, our strategy is much different. We have companies in Silicon Valley. So when I say Silicon Valley, I don't mean we're not in Silicon Valley. We have a pretty big presence in Silicon Valley. But, you know, one of the reasons I went to AOL is because I felt like in the future, and we went, you know, to programmatic early, is that having open data systems is going to be really important. So I think one of the things agencies aren't taking enough advantage of is, you know, we have an open data system and platform. I see people in Silicon Valley closing off data to partners in a big way. So I think, you know, you can use us as an open data platform. We will be more friendly on the data side, which I think is important for agencies. Second piece is, you know, we have some of the largest media properties in the world. We're number one in global news with Huffington Post. We're number one distributor content on Facebook. You know, we have a lot of huge assets. We're number either 2 or 3 in video right now, both in content served and in ads served. We're number 1 in 16 premium video categories. So I think there's a lot of assets at AOL that we probably haven't done a good job marketing, frankly, to the level that we could. And I think the bottom line is AOL's got a very desirable demographic. It's people with money, but our job is to prove that ROI. I was on a flight out here. My flight was delayed by 3.5 hours at Newark, so I got a lot of reading done.
Not Teterboro, mind you. He said Newark.
And you know, I read the RBC report on social media, And one of the things that I took away from it was, the opportunity around all digital is just getting started. Only 17% of clients are spending 50% of their money on digital. That means 83% aren't. So there's a big opportunity. The reverse side of that is, I think when you think about what AOL brings to the table, if you look at the topics in that report, AOL's has some of the strongest capabilities in the industry in those areas, and I need to prove it to you. We need to prove it to you, but I'm really happy with where we are as a company from a capability standpoint.
And someone was up here from Google yesterday, talked about a 3 to 6 month horizon, and if they tried to have a crystal ball looking out 3 to 5 years, don't go there because the world is moving too fast, and if you think you can predict the future, you can't. But obviously, AOL has to have a strategic vision as to where you see the company now 3 years from now. I mean, you've done an enormous job the last couple of years, but set the framework. If we were sitting here 3 years from now, where do you see the strategic vision going, and what would you hope AOL would look like?
Yeah, I would disagree with the 3 to 6 month time frame, because I think that humans, technology changes, but humans don't. Like, I'll take the messaging space, for instance. Yossi Vardi, who was the founder of ICQ, who's a very well-known venture capitalist in Israel, said to me, he's a little bit older than I am, but he said to me, look, one of the first weeks I started AOL, he said, the messaging space is never going to be static. He said, there's always going to be 5 or 6 messaging platforms constantly going, and generally you can't bet on one because they'll change. And I said, why is that? He said, because teenagers don't want their parents knowing what they're doing. And he said that this was like 7 years ago or 6 years ago to me, and I thought, wow, that doesn't seem, I don't know if that's accurate or not. And every single thing he said about human behavior has turned out to be true. And I was at a dinner last week. I was on vacation with my kids, and there was another family with us, a bunch of kids. And I said to the kids, what messaging platforms are you using? And I was amazed at how far off the kind of core platforms they were on new platforms. And I said, why are you guys not on those platforms? He said, it's my mom's service, now. Which there's 2 sides to it. One side of it is, look, moms being on a platform is really valuable. So if you want people with money who buy things, that's probably a good platform to still be on. If you're trying to keep up with the latest kids, you're going to have, this is why the agency opportunities are big opportunities. Clients look at something and say, oh, I need to be here. The reality is they don't need to be there. They need to be where the puck's going. And the agency community can always be pointed. You don't have the legacy issue a client has. You can always point to where the next, thing is. So I'm a huge believer, I think, just in, where things are, the constant evolutionary changes that are going to happen in the industry are going to keep happening. And I'd be careful listening to the 3 to 6 month, mentality. I think you got to have a 20-year mentality.
Good. That's so we can plan for the future.
Yeah.
So you made a big investment in Adapt TV, programmatic television landscape. There's now an awful lot of advanced targeting going on traditional television. We're going to hear a lot about that today. Where do you see the advanced TV programmatic landscape going? And do you feel that now, with all of the advanced data that a lot of us are using now to inform our television buys in terms of real-time marketing, and that's being done, does that bode really well for the future of cable television and traditional television? And where do the two intersect? And where do you see the future of where you're going in that whole space?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a number of companies that outrun the bear, both on the traditional and digital side, and you'll end up with a mixture of digital and traditional in the future. So I think you can't look at the landscape today and say everyone's going to make it. Everyone's not going to make it. The bear is going to catch some people. But the people who do move quickly, you'll have a combined cable, traditional TV, digital, combination in the future of a certain amount of players. It's not going to be 100. It'll probably be the same amount of players that were traditionally in the TV landscape. It'll just be a mixture of digital and that side. And then the other thing that I think is a huge opportunity is, people like TV. I mean, and people love digital, and they love everything about digital, I think, overall. But the reality is, most human beings, many people in this room probably don't, but most people have 7 or 8 hours to burn every night when they get home from work. I think the best thing that can happen is the combination of what people love about digital mixing with TV, both on the content side and on the ad side. That NCAA example with Buick, I don't know if whoever has Buick, you did a good job. Like, I have a different mentality after this weekend on Buick, but the reality is you had a massive chunk of my time to show me different products, different storylines, those things. So if the creative community doesn't do 1,000 times the amount of creative, 5 or 10 years from now, I'd be really surprised.
Yeah. Do you see a world where the cable universe and traditional broadcast television universe are going to put their inventory up for true programmatic buying?
100%.
You do see that. Interesting.
Maybe not all of it, maybe in different ways,
but they will. Okay. So a little bit of a left turn. I know that diversity within AOL is a big issue and also something near and dear to your heart. I would say that from a 4A's perspective, we are doing everything we can to build more diversity within our community. Chris Wild talked yesterday about the high school initiative. It's a bit, I'm sorry to say, but if you look at this room, there's not anywhere near as much diversity as we would like. And I think as an industry, we've got to do something about it. Talk a little bit about AOL's initiatives.
So there's a couple things. When again, I think a lot of people are putting out statistics on diversity overall, and we, as a business, we have statistics that are either at par or better than the other internet companies, in many cases better, but they're really not great overall. So we made a decision basically to get directly involved in diversity, and I'm chairing the Internet Advertising Bureau diversity initiative with Randall Rothenberg, and we just went out and did a town hall sessions across the US over the last 3 months. So we went to multiple cities, had rooms like this where we just said, let's talk about diversity. What are you doing? How do you solve it? And I found 3 things. Number one is the work the 4A's are doing at the high school, what Chris was talking about, is really tremendous, because that's actually taking real people, real pipeline, and they're going to get pipelined right into the industry, and there's nothing more important than that overall. Second thing is most companies have diversity initiatives or heads of diversities, but they're actually not plugged into the infrastructure in the company to actually bring diversity in. And then the third thing is most companies don't do diversity onboarding well. So if you're a diverse person, it's highly likely when you get interviewed and when you start at your company, you're going to be sitting across the table from somebody who's not diverse. And if you have diverse concerns, like one of the things I saw in the Diversity Roadshow we did was a study that was done at Stanford, which is just by showing a Stanford diversity student a 30-minute video about how to fit into Stanford's culture as a diverse student, Stanford had a higher dropout rate of diverse students, that just by showing them a video about how to fit into the community, the attrition rates went down.
Wow.
And so I think the work you guys are doing, I could talk about it for a long time. And I'll make this, I didn't think about this before, but I'll make this offer. I will take 3 kids from the high school this summer for internship.
Wow.
Happy to do it. I don't know who I talked to, but send them.
We'll take them. We could spend the whole afternoon chatting. Tim, thank you so much for making yourself available.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.